The air was thick with heat and tension. A guard's whistle pierced the silence, then a scream. 2 inmates were locked in a brutal fight on the farming field. One swung a sharpened piece of metal. The other fell, clutching his neck as blood soaked the dirt beneath him. Inmates froze. Guards raised their rifles. Horses kicked up dust as they galloped toward the chaos. The man on the ground wasn't moving. And the other, he dropped the weapon, lifted his hands, and whispered, "It was him or me." That day, under the blazing Louisiana sun, the field at Angola Prison turned red. But what really led to that moment? And how did this prison, once a slave plantation, become one of the most feared places in America? Let's go back to where it all began. Angola Prison sits on 18,000 acres of land, bigger than the island of Manhattan. It's surrounded by swamps, razor wire, and men with guns. For many inmates here, a sentence to Angola isn't just time served. It's a life sentence to survive. Inmates wake up before sunrise. They march out in lines under armed watch to pick vegetables and cotton in the same fields where enslaved people once worked over a century ago. The guards ride horses, wearing sunglasses and rifles strapped across their backs, just like overseers from the past. But here's what most people don't know. Inside Angola, the violence never stops. Every corner has its own rules, its own bosses, and its own silent wars. One of those men was Jerome Carter, a lifer who had been inside for over 20 years. He'd entered Angola at 19, charged with armed robbery that went wrong. He swore he didn't pull the trigger, but in Angola, innocence doesn't matter. What matters is power. Jerome learned the rules fast. Keep your head down. Don't talk too much. And never owe anyone a favor. Because in here, a favor could cost you your life. But one afternoon, while working on the farm line, something happened that broke all 3 rules. A young inmate named Darnell, just 19, small, quiet, collapsed under the heat. He wasn't moving. The guards laughed. One of them shouted, "Pick him up or leave him there. He's not my problem." Jerome couldn't walk away. He lifted Darnell up, helped him back to the barracks, and gave him his own water ration. That small act of kindness was about to put a target on his back. Because the man who ran that work crew, the same man who kept order in the field, was known as Reese. Tall, scarred, and ruthless. He saw Darnell as weak, and anyone who helped the weak was weaker. By nightfall, Reese spread the word. Jerome's soft. And soft men don't last long here. From that day, Jerome's life inside Angola became a ticking clock. Days turned into weeks. The tension in the dorms grew thicker. Someone stole Jerome's boots, then his food. And when he went to complain to the guards, they turned their backs. One night, while everyone else was asleep, Jerome woke up to the sound of footsteps approaching his bunk. He opened his eyes and saw a shadow standing over him. A hand reached under the pillow beside his head. And then, everything went black. Jerome opened his eyes to darkness. His head was pounding, his vision blurry. All he could taste was blood. The dorm was quiet, except for the sound of a fan humming somewhere above. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his ribs like fire. Someone had beaten him badly. When morning came, the guards dragged him out to the yard. No one said a word. Not one inmate looked at him. In Angola, silence wasn't weakness. It was survival. Everyone knew who had ordered the beating, Reese. But naming him would have been suicide. As Jerome limped through the line for morning count, a guard leaned down and whispered, "You keep your mouth shut, Carter, or next time we won't find you breathing." That's how Angola worked, through fear and silence. Everything had a price. And everyone had a choice, speak and die, or obey and live. Days later, Jerome returned to the fields. The sun was blazing, and sweat stung his cuts. Reese watched him from a distance, grinning. Jerome could feel his eyes on him, like a predator waiting for its prey to slip. But something had changed in Jerome. He was done being prey. He started working faster, harder, keeping his head down, but his mind sharp. He paid attention to everything. Who traded cigarettes with who? Who slipped messages during meals? Who walked the yard with guards but never got searched? He began to see the system for what it was. Angola wasn't a prison. It was a kingdom. And the guards? They didn't just control it. They profited from it. One night, Jerome overheard something in the showers. Two inmates whispered about a new shipment of contraband, brought in by one of the guards. Weapons, pills, even cell phones. And at the center of it all was Reese. Jerome realized something. Reese wasn't just another inmate. He was protected. He was business. The next day, Jerome approached a man named Big Leon, an older inmate who'd been inside longer than anyone. He was quiet, respected, and dangerous. Rumor had it he once ran half the contraband inside Angola before handing it off to Reese. Jerome told him what he knew. Leon didn't look surprised. He just nodded and said, "Boy, you just stepped into the fire. And once you in it, there's no stepping out." That night, Leon slipped Jerome a small blade wrapped in cloth. "For protection," he said. "Keep it close. You're gonna need it." Weeks passed. Jerome stayed quiet, but he was watching, waiting. Until one afternoon, during roll call, a commotion broke out in the kitchen. A guard shouted for help. Smoke was rising. Jerome saw his chance. In the chaos, he followed Reese into the hallway behind the mess hall, where the sound of alarms couldn't reach. The air was thick with steam. Reese turned around and smiled. "So you finally grew a spine, huh?" Before Jerome could speak, Reese lunged. They crashed against the wall, fighting for control. The blade slipped from Jerome's hand. Reese punched him hard in the jaw, grabbed the knife, and raised it high. Jerome caught his wrist. They struggled. The blade turned. And this time, it was Reese who went down. Reese gasped, staring up at Jerome as blood spread across the floor tiles. His final words were barely a whisper. "You just signed your death warrant." Jerome dropped the blade and backed away, shaking. The alarms were still blaring. Guards were coming. He knew one thing for sure. In Angola, killing a man didn't mean freedom. It meant you just joined the cycle. The sirens echoed through the corridors of Angola. Jerome was on his knees, hands in the air, as guards swarmed the kitchen. Reese lay motionless behind him, blood pooling under his body. "Don't move," one guard shouted. Another slammed Jerome to the ground. His face hit the tile. Cold steel cuffs locked around his wrists. They dragged him out like an animal. Inmates pressed against the windows, silent, watching. Everyone knew what that meant. He wasn't coming back. Jerome spent the next 30 days in the dungeon, Angola's isolation block. A small concrete cell, no window, no light. The air was thick with rot and sweat. The only sound was the buzz of a dying light bulb and the distant hum of guards' radios. Every day, a tray of cold food slid under the door. Every night, screams echoed down the hallway. In that darkness, Jerome replayed everything. The fight, the blade, the look on Reese's face. He hadn't wanted to kill him, but in Angola, it was either kill or be killed. He thought about Darnell, the kid he once saved on the field. He wondered if he'd ever get out. He wondered if he'd just become the very thing he once tried not to be. After a month, the door finally opened. Two guards came for him. They didn't speak. They just walked him down a long hallway toward the warden's office. The warden, a tall man with a deep southern drawl, stared at him for a long time before speaking. "You think you're different, Carter? You think killing him makes you free? Let me tell you something. This place don't change. It just swallows men like you whole." Jerome said nothing. The warden leaned forward. "Reese was useful. You're not. But the truth is, we like men like you. Men who know how to follow the rhythm of this place. You'll serve your time, and you'll work. Until the day you stop breathing." That was it. No trial. No hearing. No chance. They sent him to Camp J, the hardest unit in Angola. Here, inmates worked 12 hours a day in the fields, chains on their ankles, sun beating down on their backs. Guards on horseback rode along the lines with shotguns. Anyone who stopped, even for a second, got whipped with a stick. The same fields where slaves once labored, now held men serving life sentences, sweating under the same Louisiana sun. Years passed. Jerome aged inside those walls. His hair turned gray, his hands calloused from the shovel. But he became something else too, a teacher. He started mentoring young inmates, the same way he once helped Darnell. He taught them how to read, how to write, how to stay alive in a place designed to break them. Some nights, he'd sit by the window of his dorm, staring at the endless stretch of farmland and say, "This place, it don't end when the gate closes. It ends when you decide it can't own you anymore." But even peace in Angola doesn't last long. One summer night, a riot broke out in another dorm. Inmates turned on the guards. Fires burned. Sirens wailed. The smell of smoke and fear filled the air. Jerome stood still, watching the flames rise through the cracks in the ceiling. He knew what would come next: more lockdowns, more punishment, more pain. But he also knew something else. If this was his world, he could still choose who he was inside it. He could be another victim of Angola's brutality, or he could be the man who refused to let it define him. Years later, a journalist visited Angola to film a documentary. She met Jerome, now in his 60s. His voice was calm. His eyes were tired, but clear. When she asked him what Angola really was, he said, "Angola ain't a prison. It's a mirror. It shows this country what it doesn't want to see. How easy it is to turn people into property again. The walls just changed color, that's all." Today, Angola still stands. A place built on pain, history, and silence. Some call it the farm. Others call it hell on earth. But for men like Jerome, it's both the beginning and the end. Because inside Angola, there's only one truth. Freedom doesn't always come from walking out the gate. Sometimes it's finding peace behind the fence. If you want to uncover more untold stories from inside the world's toughest prisons, subscribe now and step inside the walls with us.